What makes a zombies map good? Everyone has their favorite maps, and there's been countless tier lists of which map is the best, which ones are terrible, etc., etc. I believe everyone to some degree knows, at least somewhere in the back of their mind, why one map feels better than another. A zombies player has lasting impressions of a map from their playing, and through this, intuitively, some of what makes a map good or bad will be understood, even if it's more of a feel and less of a pinpointed aspect. I therefore want to attempt, with as little bias as possible, to try and review the maps of the Call of Duty Zombies game mode to determine if objectively a map is good or bad. Everybody already ranks maps based on their opinions of a map, but it's rarely talked about in finer detail why mechanically a map is designed poorer than others, so I'm attempting to do so. To accomplish this, I am taking a look at what I believe to be the 5 aspects of a map design that incorporate all of its facets: the map design and layout, aesthetics and coloring, any Easter eggs or main quests, the equipment the map introduces, and the overall entertainment a map provides. I'm going to grade these on a 2-point scale, giving 0 points for having little to no redeeming qualities in a section, 1 point for decent strengths but with too many glaring weaknesses, and 2 points for having very little diminishing and otherwise stellar performance in a category. The question remains, what about these facets makes a map good or bad? I want to give a quick rundown of how I'm trying to grade the map based on these criteria, what means the map has strength and what means weakness. For map design, positives include having good flow of a map with smooth traversing and exploration, zombie spawns not ruining this flow by cutting off important routes or negating camping and training spots, and the layout doesn't confuse the player or make little sense. For the map design to be poor, there's no real camping or training spots, the spawns for zombies regularly cut off the player, especially unfairly, and a lot of the map is unsafe to play in. However, it's not just a matter of openness, as having too much open space is a bad thing. It makes the game boring as well to simply sit in a giant box with nothing in it. That's why there's no highway overpass zombies map. Aesthetics can be positive in having a unique theme of the map, the overall location and its wow factor, and finer detailing, but negatives include poor assets to help visual storytelling, bland color palettes, and a lack of detail or boring setting. The Easter egg category is based upon having an actual Easter egg, as well as having one that is sensible to follow or figure out without a guide. A good Easter egg has lasting effects on the map, transforming the map in some way with spectacle for doing and completing it, and the overall story is coherent and interesting behind both the zombies' overarching story and the map story. Equipment is fairly straightforward. For the most points, a map has to introduce new weapons, wonder weapons, and perks, all of which must be visually well made and functionally effective in game. Having no new perks or weapons, or having said new equipment be abysmal to use, loses points for this category. Finally, entertainment. Is the map fun to play? While more opinion-based per se, I do think that the overall entertainment on a map is important, and not just an average of the good and bad in the previous criteria. Entertainment encompasses what there is to do on a map, what brings you back to the map when you boot up a game of zombies. This can be challenges, time trials, side Easter eggs, unique ways of tackling a map, or other things unique to a map that entice a player. Without anything to do besides kill the zombies in a bland environment, eventually the map will chalk up to being boring, which would lose points in this category, even if ironically that is the original purpose of this game mode. All of that out of the way, I would then like to begin to talk about the individual maps themselves. But before we can talk about individual maps, we need to talk about what I have come to call dead zones. A dead zone is a portion of the map that is essentially an unplayable section of the map. Typically speaking, most zombie maps are constructed in either a box or trident format. A box format is highlighted by a central avenue of movement that is only opened after the power has been turned on, and forces the players to an east or west wing of the map to get to that power switch in the back of the map, or requires players to move through 2 wings of a map from a central spawning to the power switch. The Trident format, first showcased in Origins, involves a map divided into 3 main sections connected to the starting area, which allows for a more branching initial pathway and a clearer progression of the map, with an added sense of expansiveness. The box format typically functions as a better means of looping the map back in on itself, but the Trident format leads to a better overall interconnectivity. Box format maps function as the map itself being a loop, while Trident format maps function as the map being three separate states. What Trident formations do is create environments where there are three areas to explore and survive, aiding in the map's atmosphere and perception of scales. Box formations are simpler, with either 2 or 3 lanes of map looping together, but this tends to help keep exploration of the map easy to understand and traverse. In both formats, for a zombies map, there are areas called dead zones, where the player cannot theoretically play the map in. This means that these areas, these dead zones, are only available realistically as travel sections, areas to move the player from one section to another, or simply death traps. This idea of a travel section is highly prevalent on Trident maps in order to establish interconnectivity through the three areas, but can also be prevalent on box maps that have a central middle lane to loop back to the start of the map, negating the need for substantial areas in the east or west lanes for higher round difficulty. Travel sections are typically, in the most basic sense, long hallways that connect two larger rooms, each of which might be useful for clearing some kind of horde, or in some cases, to train a horde in. However, while zombies are actively spawning into the map at the start of a round or in the middle of it, the player cannot move through these sections without a high chance of being cornered. Most travel sections are hallways of some kind, which typically is able to be blocked by one zombie's collision. This means that if a single zombie spawns in front of the player in these travel sections, then that player must either kill the zombie quickly or be pincered between the zombies ahead and those behind, with no room to move and limited ability to keep the zombies from the player. However, a dead zone is not always a travel section. While travel sections are dead zones that are simply portions of the map entirely dedicated to moving the players from one play space to another, dead zones can be any portion of a map. A dead zone is any area of the map where the player cannot reliably be considered safe during a round of zombies, regardless of skill. What this means, to further explain, is that while zombies are spawning or are in high numbers, a dead zone is an area of the map the player cannot be in during those times, without suffering a high possibility of downing. A dead zone is unreliable to train in, posing too little room or too poor spawns to create a steady loop to collect zombies in a manageable group. Camping is also unreliable, as spawns or distance from spawns to player is too poor to reliably keep the player from being swarmed. It isn't impossible to survive in a dead zone, but it's very unlikely. Due to a poor layout, oppressive spawns, and lack of space, a dead zone is avoided during gameplay, save for the end of a round where there are no chances to be cut off and swarmed as you traverse the area. This likelihood of being caught and downed in these areas, the unreliability of survival within them, is what makes them dead zones, for they aren't spaces in the map that are ever used, save for traversing in some situations. A dead zone, therefore, is a space of the map where players will not attempt to stay in during the round, to put it most simply. 3 examples of dead zones are as follows. The sweatshop room with the power switch and die rise, with the amount of tables clogging the room and the singular door leading out but multiple spawns within, the room is too compact for any sizable horde to be safely trained or killed, and the pathing of the zombies will lead them around the tables in fashions that make camping ineffective, and zombies will spawn from the elevator shafts as well, splitting attention and forcing kills one at a time instead of firing in a line. The tables also only allow for one-way movement, so any zombie that happens to be amidst the tables cuts off that entire passage, making it nigh impossible to effectively train in the area and survive. The supply depot and tank foundry hallways to the armory and infirmary in Gorod Krovi are 2 examples of travel sections, and both of these hallways, one being a robot hand and the other being a crashed train, the map is single file, which means any zombie at the other end of the hallway must be killed before traversing the area. As these 2 hallways are simply connecting the branching areas back to the center, they're small to encourage players to stay within their areas during the round, moving when the zombies thin. However, zombies spawn rapidly in front of the exit to whichever direction you enter these halls from, meaning if the player does not approach these during the end of the round, zombies will cut off the player and the player will be swarmed, indicating this is a dead zone. The laboratories on Moon don't have too many spawns, but the main issue is lack of mobility around these spawns. With Nova 6 crawlers falling out of the vents into the center pathways, these zombies create spawns that make attempts to train ineffective, especially considering their short range teleport, further exacerbating the problem in such a small area. Furthermore, the second and third lab floor stairway is entirely a dead zone at all times save the end of a round. As with the way zombies spawn in, as you head up the stairs, the zombies will pile out of the vent at the top of the stairs rapidly if they're Nova 6 crawlers, or out of the window just past the stairway door if normal zombies. This creates a dangerous wall of crawlers that must be looked down to be effectively dispatched, as well as zombies attacking at eye level as well, and with another spawn just around the corner at the base of the stairs, the player is nearly guaranteed to be cornered in the stairway unless they traverse it while only a small handful of zombies remain in the round. Now that the initial criteria is underway, which map is first? It's tempting to simply go from first to last, but with the release of Black Ops 6 and the similarities between Liberty Falls and Transit, the former even using the jet gun as its wonder weapon, for relevance in contemporary topics, I feel it's best to start there and hope that the YouTube algorithm agrees.